Well, hey now, folks. We are here. We are here. We are here.
We are live.
I'm John Duffin with Duffinmedia, and I get to introduce my buddy Zach Carlin from the Summit Chasers Network, and we get to have a little fun with you guys tonight. Well, hey now, folks. Oh, and by the way, I'm checking myself out.
Oh, what to say? Are you watching yourself?
That's so vain and awful. So that's exactly what I was doing, right? So in the meantime, I hear my own voice. Hey, folks, if you are joining us on Facebook Live, we are thrilled to have you. If you are joining us live on LinkedIn Live, just as cool, maybe even a little bit cooler, but either way, all equal, right? And if you're joining us on YouTube Live, that is phenomenal. Anyway, my buddy Zach, who is a monster business mind, and I get to do our first collaboration in front of all of you. So
it's going to go great.
In 1 second.
It's going to go great. We had this. We've been rehearsing this and planning this for better part of a few months now.
Right.
And we got it so dialed in, and it was a symphony. People would have confused this for Beethoven or some sort of fantastical, timeless art piece.
Fantastic.
And last minute, by last minute, I mean yesterday, we decided we're going to have fun with this. And one of the things that we like to say, especially us at Summit Chasers, is that if you want to be great at something, first you have to be shitty at it. So we're just going to go, we're going to be ourselves.
Yep.
And we decided if we don't screw up, we screwed up. So we're going to have some fun. Obviously, it's going to be valuable. But for the most part, it's going to be fun. We want it to be interactive. And you're going to get a ton out of it, even if it's just you get reminded of something. You get something, oh, maybe I should focus more on that. Or, yeah, no, we are lacking in that. Or I do need to come back and focus on these types of things. Then it's been a success.
And so the fact of the matter is that it's, like I said again, we get to convey a bunch of information. But I repeat, honest to God, that with all that being said, it is the element of fun that we've got lined up as well too. So also, as we go, if you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn Live, you got a comment box. Drop a note in the comments so that we know that you were here. Not that we don't trust you or anything like that. Again, I think it's great, right? And we're in evening. So if you're giving up even 5 minutes of your evening routine, well, to me, I think that's incredible. But it's evening. Let us know you're here. We can say hi to you, acknowledge you, honor you, all that sort of thing. And in the meantime, too, we get to drive a little bit more content. So what the hell are we going to do tonight? In addition to have some fun? Well, hey there, Tommy Kenyon, my buddy. Oh my God. So from Summit of Greatness Land in Lewis Howes, Tommy Kenyon joining us live tonight. I'm glad you're here. This is great. Wait a minute. Summit Chasers Productions is here too. This is thick cool.
Here.
Oh my God. Live and in the fresh. Audrina. This is see. Now I know we're doing the right thing. I know. So look, here's what we get to do tonight, right? I get to introduce Zach Carlin, and Zach gets to share a little bit more about all the cool stuff he brings to the table.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I'm honored to be here. I'm excited to see that podcast that Tommy just chimed in and let us know that he's been working on. Yep. So beautiful. My name is Zach, as John put so eloquently. I'm founder of Summit Chasers Network. I'm a former 3-time professional athlete. I flipped a little bit over half a dozen brick and mortar businesses. I've started about 3 now agencies. I've been a coach for the last 16 years. And when I say that, I feel a lot older than I look. Waking up, I feel old every day. But I have experience in the coaching and my business mind that really came from experience in addictions counseling. CBT, which for those of you that don't know, is cognitive behavioral therapy. I've done life coaching, health and wellness coaching, sales coaching, leadership coaching, communications coaching, and business coaching. And through all of this experience working with companies like Hewlett Packard when they acquired Zerto, working with Chrissy over at when she was at Nextdoor, working with the Tamcos, and all the way down to the small family businesses that are just they do what they got to do every day just to get by and provide for their family and for the people on their teams. And I noticed a big thing. We were providing band-aids. I call it band-aids and buoys. And I just made this up today when we were talking earlier, John. I was providing band-aids and buoys. we were tackling the symptoms. And businesses get into, or businesses, people who want to be high performers, they get into this mindset, or they get into this flow. It's like a negative flow, where they're constantly just trying to keep their heads above water. And that's where I say I'm just throwing them buoys, as opposed to pulling them out of the water and teaching them how to swim. Right? I'm solving just symptoms. I'm not doing anything for the cause. So we can solve the symptoms, but if they don't try to solve the cause, they're going to come back with the same symptoms or worse symptoms later on. And I felt like I was just contributing to that, not actually solving the problems for these people who want to be high achievers, who want to provide, who want to do great things, who want to change the world in some cases. So that's where we, my partner Adrina, who I believe is here watching, she was in the comments, we decided to start Summit Chasers, where we get to, there she is, where we get to provide a solve for the cause and work with people who want to achieve these amazing things. So I'm very excited to be here. And we had the podcast, or the Summit Chasers podcast, which is where I get to meet individuals like Mr. John Duffin and get to do these amazing things. So John, take it away. Let's learn a little bit more about you.
I definitely will. And thank you for all that. By the way, I don't want this to be a competitive thing. I host a podcast as well. And that's where I got to interview Zach Carlin. Where we buddied up was guesting on each other's podcasts and developing this mutual fan club. As for me, I get to optimize your communications by leveraging your voice. So what does that mean? I'm a communications and sales leader. I don't just make up titles. That sounds really vain, right? But I would base that pretty much on what people have said about me, and also the fact that I've got over 25 years of successful television sales, radio sales, digital sales, sales management, executive leadership. I've held pretty much every seat as it regards to, other than the traffic department. But the fact is, I've held every other seat as it relates to running television stations, generating revenue, submitting plans, grooming, training, leading, hiring, coaching employees. And from that 25-year ascent with some of the largest broadcast platforms in the United States, I also had the chance to develop my own business. Started as a voice coaching platform, a voiceover platform, and then morphed into a business coaching platform. Again, when I talk about hosting the podcast, I get to speak in front of audiences and all that sort of thing. And I get to be able to share a story, some personal, some business, all of it under the guise of authenticity, all of it. Being able to use your most authentic, true business voice to improve the results of your personal life, and absolutely, as it turned out, to improve the results of your business life as well, too. So that's some of the fun stuff that I've gotten to do. And we get to do a bunch of cool things tonight, right? So what are we going to do?
Well, we got a few things. Yeah, who knows? This might go off into something completely different. But as of right now, what we have planned right now is we're going to focus on your foundations and the importance of focusing on your foundations. Like I said before, we focus so much on the band-aids and buoys. We focus so much on, I just need to survive. I just need to get through this. I just need to get this much revenue built up this quarter. I just need to get this next promotion. I just need to do well in this next review. But that doesn't, just focusing on those short-sighted things, it doesn't create long-term success. So what a lot of people forget about is your foundations. How do you develop habits? What skills do you have? How do you develop new skills? How do you communicate? Right? And we're going to talk about where you can make the biggest impact right now in your business, career, and life, and then unlocking your power to influence and make life happen for you instead of to you. And this will work. This will be great. Move slide, please. See, there we go. First, whether you want
that's our hidden code.
Whether you want to scale your business or your career to the moon, you want to build an empire, or you just want to be able to live the life and travel and live carefree, or maybe you're just still looking for what that thing is. What I can tell you, this isn't going to be as another, AI software or social media content strategy or a fad diet that has you looking sad, looking at cherry tomatoes. and wondering why you made these choices. And then in 2 weeks, you quit and you end up in the drive-thru at McDonald's because it's too difficult and you're down on yourself. And then you're not sure why you can't get the life that you want. And the reason that a lot of people do, they keep yo-yoing back and forth. Your business yo-yos back and forth is because you don't focus on your foundations, and the strength of your foundation will ultimately determine your potential success. And we can start out with a pretty easy example of why this is so important. We'll start with a house. Everyone's been in a house before for the most part, right? And you see how houses are built. They start with the foundation to make sure it's nice and flat. They start with all the cement and rebar, and they make sure that it can support a house and a family over time, long term. They start with the foundations. Now, a more complicated example, maybe a more example that you can relate with, is basketball. I'm not saying everyone here is a professional basketball player, but basketball players generally don't start out learning how to play the game by dunking, by doing the between the legs 360 blindfolded dunks. No, they learn the basics first, the foundations, how to dribble with both hands, keeping your heads up, shot mechanics. And not only do they start there, the greats always come back and focus on the foundations. And if you don't know, that is LeBron James. He's always focusing on his foundations, his fitness, his shooting mechanics. The difference between somebody in the NBA in the finals that can shoot 80% from the free throw line and 85% from the free throw line, a lot of times is the difference between winning a championship and losing in the first round. What are some examples of your personal foundations? It's your mindset. How do you take care of your mind? Your habits. How do you develop new habits? How do you acquire new skills? What kind of cognitive biases do you play into more often than not? What cognitive doom loops play over and over in your head that stop you from moving forward? What are your core values? And even if they're not written up on your wall, right? Even if they're not something that you recite every day, we all have core values there, maybe even if they're not defined. And the big one is how you communicate. And how you communicate is not just how I'm communicating right now, talking with words. Communicating is how you hold yourself, how you dress, how you portray, the tone that you use, who you decide to talk to. It's everything. We communicate 100% of the time. But we're here to talk about, your career and building a business and being a more successful leader. So what are business foundations? How you lead. How do you lead your people? How do you get people bought in? How do you develop other leaders? Because as a lot of you know, if you're a business owner, you can't be the only one at the top. If you want to scale, you have to develop other leaders. You have to develop other people who can do what you currently do. And that means managing talent density, which is hiring, firing, and developing other people. Strategy development. How do you develop strategy? And how do you implement it? How do you communicate that implementation? How you make those decisions? How you create and improve your SOPs, your processes and systems. And then the culture. Culture, that's been thrown around a lot as a buzzword, right? And a lot of people, you ask 10 people, what is culture? They get probably 9.5 different answers. However, culture is a big foundation for your business. And then another one, as you can see, there's one on here that has been repeated, is communication. And that's where John's the expert.
Oh, really? But with all of that to be said, like I said, look, point blank, it's not just the way the content is described. You could kill yourself writing culture documents and putting up mantras on walls and what have you, but the ability to be able to build and sustain the foundations is all done in the way that you communicate. It is a business imperative, not a luxury.
And if you're not constantly focusing on these foundations, you're setting yourself up for long-term failure. And the reason for that, there's a reason that we don't constantly come back. And a lot of times it's because of early success. We got the promotion. We got the good job. We got to the first 1 or 5 million in our business. I don't need to improve anything. I get complacent. I don't need to focus on how we hire people because the first 5 people I brought in that were my neighbors worked out great. Why do I need to go back and focus on that? Why do I need to focus on our processes and making sure our SOPs are documented? Why do I need to focus on how I communicate to people? Because they know what I think. I don't need to communicate effectively. They're already in my head. But as you grow, that's not going to be the case. And the key to that, the key to constantly looking inward and improving these things, looking at your business and improving these things, is to take responsibility consistently with intentionality. And the difference between doing something and doing something with intention, with intentionality, is that you're constantly finding ways to improve. You create systems, and those are systems in your mind, they're processes in your mind as well. Or it could be every 3 months you put an alarm on your phone that reminds you, I should probably check and make sure that our hiring process is still working. What's the success rate of our last 5 hires? What's the success rate of our last 5 clients? What's is there consistency within how we're developing our product? Is there consistency with how we're providing our product or our service? You have to do things intentionally. And a lot of times we don't take it. That starts with taking responsibility. And I know this is something that, your parents have probably said a lot. And then you have some guy on the internet being like, I need to take more responsibility. Well, when this was a huge lesson for me. And I didn't realize it was a lesson for me really until recently. I'll say recently. I mean, it was in the last year or so. To get a little candid with everybody, I wasn't in a great spot when I got out of high school. I didn't graduate high school. I was actually a drug addict for about a year afterwards. And what got me out of it was a boxing coach that said, you need to take more responsibility for things. And it's like, yeah, my dad told me that a million times. I just shut up and leave me alone. He's like, no, you need to do it intentionally. Even if it's not obvious that it's not your responsibility that this happened. It's not because of you that this didn't happen. What, do you want life to keep happening to you? Do you want to admit that you have no control over where your life goes? I'm like, well, no. He's like, well, you need to learn how to take responsibility for everything, even if it's not obvious. You need to be able to look at a situation, even if it's only 5%, even if you could only control that 5%, did you control that 5%? So if you're hiring somebody and they don't work out, is it because they didn't work out? Is it because they weren't inept or qualified for the position? Or was it because they weren't set up for success? And if they weren't just the right person, then how do they get hired in the first place? You need to take responsibility for that. And if you do, you're going to improve it. Because if we do not take responsibility for these things and do it intentionally, we're admitting that we have no control over our future, the outcomes that we want. And if you have a dream, if you have an outcome, and everybody here has a dream, an outcome, a goal that they want to achieve. And if you want to, feel free to put it in the comments. Put it out there. If you voice it, you're going to be held accountable for it. You have accountability for it. You're more likely to achieve it. You got to be able to communicate it. But everybody has that. And once you commit to the outcome, it's your responsibility to do everything that you can to achieve that. To dot every I, to take responsibility for everything that goes right and everything that goes wrong, and then learn and improve. And a big part of that is your foundations. A huge part of that is your foundations. But what does this have to do with business and us? Let's go into a little bit of a case study so we can show a little bit better exactly what we're talking about in a more realistic scenario. So, John, take her away.
Look, the foundations are critical, but when they're not conveyed properly or people are not all buying in, then they kind of don't matter. That, like I said, what matters to you becomes really irrelevant if it doesn't matter to them. And I'll get to that part in a second. But let's give you a quick example, right? So look, people in business, jot a note in the comments. Jot, that sounds like right out of 1950. Drop a note in the comments if you manage a team, if you work with colleagues, if it's more than just you. So here's an example where it is multiple people in the situation. So say, for example, your company just rolled out a new initiative that boosts customer satisfaction over the next quarter. So you're all jazzed up by this. You're going to lead this team meeting and you're going to cover the strategies and the goals and responsibilities of each player involved. And you're so excited. And you bought lunch and your slides look hot and you look hot. And and by the way, you were sure that you were very clear and concise in regards to the way that you laid everything out and the steps that were needed to accomplish the mission in the coming weeks. But you realize not everyone was in equal lockstep. There was one employee that was struggling to meet the deadlines and accomplish the day-to-day tasks that seemed to be just missing steps. So to compensate, because you're the proactive type, you're going to make sure that everyone is up, someone is making up for the lapses in performance while checking on the employee to go over the job specifics, KPIs, overall initiatives. So you've communicated again the initiatives, expectations, and goals to make sure this employee knew exactly what was expected of them. Then a little more time goes by, maybe a few weeks, and you can see they're still struggling. So this happens a lot. They seem to be working hard, but they just aren't hitting the metrics. So now it's obviously a tough conversation and often followed by a hard decision. Do you need to move them to another position? Do you need to move them out of the room? Do you need to move them out of the company? So you take action. As the leader, list out how you could intentionally take responsibility in this scenario to change the outcome.
Yeah, I love it.
Right? And so the most obvious place today that we as humans miss taking responsibility and being intentional is in our communication. For God's sake, in a world, in a business world, in a regular day to day, where everyone is so reactive, that's not pointing fingers. I'm just as guilty. Just as guilty. Your communication is often taken for granted, and it's the most, I think, the content is critical. Your communication is equally critical, because if you are not conveying the full message in a way that others want to hear in order to buy in, you lose. You simply lose.
And in this scenario, in that case study, most of the time, if somebody is failing in that case, you have to look at that first. Was this communicated to them? Was the expectations communicated to them? And not just was it communicated, because we've all done this before. We've been in a meeting, or we've had a one-on-one, we've had an interview, or we've had an exit interview. And it's like, I couldn't have been more clear. I felt that I conveyed my message. They should have been so clear on the expectations and how they should perform in the role, and what is a pass and what is a fail. The problem is just that you communicated for you. I thought that I communicated this. I couldn't have been more clear. Really, what you're saying is I could have been more clear for me. You're speaking for yourself. You're speaking from your perspective. And we say this with us. We have a pillar in our law of leadership. It's that communication is about them. It's about the outcome. It's not about whether you understand. So in this case, you bring this person in. We have a new initiative. Lay it out for you. Do you understand it? Cool. All right, go. Did you make sure that they understood? You have them recite it back to you? Did you give them the chance to coach you on what they should be doing? Did you give them a chance to clarify whether they knew what a pass-fail was? And then when you saw that they were failing, did they know what that failing meant? What is fail? What is a pass-fail? Was that clear to them? And if they did feel like they were failing, where did they go? What did they do? Was that clear? And if all of that was communicated, well, do you feel like your onboarding and training was solid enough? Was that communicated to them properly? Did you spend enough time? And if all that was good, then were they even in the right role? Is your hiring process on point? Did you place them in the right place? Were you asking the right questions? Was your communication when you put out the ad for the job, was it in line with the role that they were going to be playing in the company? These are all places, and so many leaders, and I'm not saying anybody here does this, but they blame it on something else. They blame it on, okay, the training just wasn't very good, or they just didn't get it. They're worst case scenario is like, they're just idiots. They got to go somewhere else. They weren't qualified, right? But if you blame it on everybody else and you don't take responsibility, then how are you going to improve? How do you not know? Now you're saying that the next however many people you bring in, the chances of them working out is a lot less. It's a lot slimmer if you don't take that responsibility. And a big part of it, a huge part of it, I'd say probably 90% of it is the communication. And because such a big part of pass, fail, success, fail is communication, I'm so happy that I get to partner with John. He's going to go over some tips and that you can use right now, and how to improve your communication on your team.
Ta-da!
I knew you were going to do it. We said he was going to do it.
So mean that I just threw that out there. Not airbrushed or nothing, that photo. But folks, I'm going to ask you two questions. Here's the first one, which is this, before the scripted question. Think about what Zach just said a moment ago. The steps that he was identifying in, like, whether pass, fail, success, failure. Think of those steps that are going on. think of the amount of time that is needed to have all of those things occur. Your time, not just your team's, yours. And so when you think about that, and you think about that series of events, did you get the message? Did you convey it properly? Do they understand? But think of the prep amount of time. We were kidding, Zach, I was kidding when we talked about the amount of time that we laid into place just to put this together. So the fact is, here's the reason that this matters, the communication side. This is the primary reason: your time, your talent, your resources. How much extra time, for those that are on live right now, just nope, not putting anybody on the spot. How much extra time do you think you have during a given day or during a given week? When you're at work, are you thinking, God, I wish I had something to do? Probably not, right? Probably not. So I ask you a second question. Have you ever had a conversation, a presentation, an encounter in business? Put it this way: an important conversation, whether it's personal or business, where you either got surprisingly negative feedback. Remember, the boss is going to come in and talk about what they're going to do and their new initiative, and they're so happy. And you still have somebody who's just not cutting it. And the knee-jerk reaction is often, well, they don't get it, or they don't. Here's the problem. Even weirder is that sense of, it's not just negative feedback, but it's the apathy. You just couldn't figure out why somebody wasn't giving you the attaboy that you felt like you so richly deserved, right? Well, I've often said, is it because of your voice? Well, I'll expand on that a bit. It is because of your communications, right? This is all about distractions and avoiding them. In my world, from a communication standpoint, distractions are death. That sounds a little morbid, I know, but the fact of the matter is, it's serious business. I just don't necessarily sound all that serious, but it is when you're trying to get a message conveyed and you're not working with the luxury of time. So the old cliche, you want to do it right, you want to do it right the first time, or something like that. Well, distractions are brutal. What are distractions? Distractions are someone thinking you mean something or say something, and you're thinking something entirely different. So often in business, people, here's the ever popular, anybody have any questions? Any questions? And you're leading a meeting. Other than, what extra commission am I getting? Is there a bonus involved? Do we leave early? Most often, do you have any questions gets arousing nothing. Okay, let's go get them. Here's the problem. They may not be grasping at all what you're trying to say. They may not be grasping your intention. And the bigger issue is, you don't even know that. You don't know why. Thought leader Brenda Burchard talks about communication being the heart of everything. If you've ever been unhappy or lonely or disconnected or stagnant, chances are it's because you haven't mastered your communication skills. That's in general. Imagine in business, mixed signals. Figure that's a distraction, mixed signals. Okay. Oh, I thought you meant no, I meant this. Think of the time, the wasted resources, the culture gone awry with that sort of disconnect and confusion. It's the brutal reality of not communicating, not just clearly, but authentically and true. Okay. By the way, we came up with these cool situational examples. On a personal note, Zach and I rehearsed this meticulously before we threw this all out the window. And I'm such a nerve job that I had a typo in here. And I had to go correct it because I'm a weirdo. But
I was wondering if you were going to do that or not. Okay.
Well, buddy, I solved that mystery right here. So if you're in business, do these situational examples sound familiar? Daily huddles or weekly meetings or that on-the-spot feedback, the ever popular, how did I do? Performance appraisals, or of course, board meetings and personnel decisions, interviews. or really rough communications, right? Folks, I'm guessing anyone on here or watching the replay, anyone on here, do you encounter these situations? I'm grateful to say that I've encountered all of them and multiple times. And this is where so much gets taken for granted. So much, right? So Zach has an example. I would go like before we get to that, sorry. Of a classic daily huddle situation.
Yeah, daily huddles are they're so effective, right? Some people, whether they're thought leaders or anybody who's used them before and used them ineffectively or done them and they got negative feedback from them, will say, no, they suck. They're the worst. But then you talk to those who do them effectively, and they're some of the best things that you could do with your team, especially if you're a small business or you have a smaller team, particularly when people on your team are either they're a little bit more disconnected. So their jobs don't necessarily work closely together on a day-to-day basis. So they become a little bit more disconnected. Or you have a lot of people on your team who are kind of jacks of all trades. They need to do a lot of things. So you need to keep track of where's everybody at with certain initiatives, with certain projects. And I had a client, he was brand new, owning a business. He started a very small insurance agency, and he had a family, and he was desperate. He'll try anything at this point. And he had 4 people on his team. Well, he had 3 people on his team, and then him being the 4th. And he was doing daily huddles. He had been doing them for about a month. And he's like, man, I keep reading about all the benefits of these daily huddles, but they're just not going anywhere. I'm getting negative feedback, and people seem disinterested. They're not engaging. I'm like, okay, well, how do you think that they're going? What do you think's going on in those daily huddles? And he said, well, I feel like I'm really getting across the urgency. I'm like, well, what do you mean urgency? He's like, well, I mean, I'm telling them that if we don't do these things, if we don't hit these lead metrics, these lead measures, then in a month from now, we might not be here. And I feel like that should have been enough to, light a fire under their butt kind of thing. But you're saying this every day to them? And he's like, well, not every day, but I mean, almost every day. I'm like, okay. So the first thing was communication is what we've already told you right now is communication is not about you. It's about them and the outcome. What do you think they're hearing when you're saying you need to go do these things or else we're not going to be in business anymore? What do you think they're hearing? They're hearing, get another job, start looking for another job. This is a sinking ship. Why would I put so much work into something that's not going to make it? That's what they're hearing, which is not something you want. You're only 3 employees. You're only 3 means of business development to hear.
Right.
So we shifted the perspective, right? What's the outcome you want? Well, I want them to hit these lead metrics. I want them to improve upon this new sales process that we put in place. And I want them to start being more active on socials and doing this business development activities. I said, okay. So how is that important for them? How do they, from their perspective, how do they get bought in to doing these things? How do they get bought into making the 200 phone calls, which nobody likes doing cold calls? They get a list and you make it 200. Who wants to do that? How do you get them bought in? What's their urgency? Speak for them. And he shifted. He got them more involved. He started asking more questions. He stopped portraying his stress because it's not about him. It's about them and the outcome. And again, he got them more involved, started asking them questions, started holding them more accountable to those lead metrics, as opposed to just like, we need to hit them or else we're not going to be in business. It's hey, if you hit them, you can book this many appointments. And if you book this many appointments, you could close at this rate, which look what your commission check could be. So we started speaking for them and their outcome and the outcome for the business. And they started engaging. They're more excited. They came and they were coming the next mornings being like, I made 300 calls and I booked this many appointments. And he's like, awesome. That's amazing. How did you do that? Great. What's your goal for today? Let's go. Let's do it. And that's it.
It's a tweak and a shift. And that's the best part, man. The way that you were describing that, Zach, in the sense that these are not seismic shifts. They are seismic results, but it doesn't take this massive change in approach or technique. Nobody needs you to sound like an announcer or a therapist. Really, we're past the day and age in corporate culture, and I'm not aware of any anymore, where answers such as "you better do this" or "because I said so," like some 50s parent, like they don't. It just doesn't go. Ultimately, you're accountable to your team, really, when you think about it, rather than what used to be the mindset. Well, they're accountable to me. Not really. Not really. So, how do you communicate? And Zach, when you gave that example of that one pivot, hey, here's what's in it for you. Oh, great. This is cool. Then let me try to go get it. And it also, the way you conveyed that was, it actually sounded like it mattered to the boss, or to the leader, I'll say, rather than the boss. So, with that being said, I'm a massive believer, and folks, the big three that I talk about, by the way, comes in a couple different ways. Here's one. I call it the three-way connect. The example was perfect, and it's a reminder. You, as the leader, as the person that's trying to get what they want, it's your responsibility to connect. And I say to the audience, your sales team, your executive leadership team, the boardroom, the client, whoever that is, it's your responsibility to be able to connect with them. How do you do it? Talk to them, not at them. Well, if we don't get this, well, then we're probably all going under. I actually have one of those examples of a former boss of mine. Bad news for him is he went under. We were fine. And it's same lessons though, right? But it's his responsibility to get us to care. And I've never forgotten that, right? And that's in the communications. It's your responsibility, whether it is slides, business plans, executive summaries, whatever it is, your latest novel, it's up to you to make certain that you're engaged with the content. None of these tweaks or shifts, by the way, that I preach have anything to do with taking a lazy approach. None of these have to do with not being prepared. Zach actually said, we've been preparing for a few months to sound casual. And so you get to do it, but you get to do that when you're buttoned up, because then you're not deathly afraid that you're going to forget something. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I can go out of order. I can go left, right. Zach can say, I can say. And folks, this is how it works when you're speaking, right? Again, you don't have to sound like a narrator, but you do have to sound true. And it's also your responsibility to bring your audience into the material. Don't let them find it on their own. Oh, they'll get it. I'll just keep reading my slides and hopefully they'll pick it up. It is your responsibility to make sure that you get them there, because it's that connection that guides your voice. Your voice is that last pass. The buy-in that you're looking for, you need to sound authentic. You need to be able to make certain that they know that you care. Legitimately, you care. And you could still be a boss and care. You could still be a leader and care. Why do we bother to do this? Very often in a very distracted world, we are really reactive. So we're literally, most calendars now, my 2:45 leads into my 2:55, and I'm only going to allot 7 minutes for that next meeting, and then I'll be running in the door, and then I got my lunch meeting. Here's the deal. As I said, the big three, second way. We need you in every conversation. You as a leader, you as the entrepreneur. We need you in it. Not providing lip service, not espousing culture when your mind's back here. We need you in it. And by you, it's your best, most true, authentic voice. Because really, it only matters if it matters to them. You're all jazzed up about your new initiative, or you're petrified about all the bad things that could happen if we don't hit our numbers. That's on you. That ain't on them. You get it to matter to them. How do you do that? I'm going to give you a couple tips to bring you into the equation. which improves the odds that people are going to be more galvanized because it's a more true version of you. Okay. So, quick hack that I get to utilize. This is a fun one for me. And it's the Navy SEALs breathing technique. So, before it sounds like all heavy and all that sort of like life and death stuff, right? So, first off, this actually is a Navy SEALs practice. If you have 16 seconds, and I know time is valuable, time is money, but if you have 16 seconds now, I'm going to walk us through. Okay. So I'm going to show you first, literally what this is, and then I'll explain why it matters. Okay. So want to play around? 16 seconds worth? Maybe you save a life. Okay, go. Now, you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. And you're going to hold for 4 seconds. Deep exhale for 4 seconds. Hold that for 4 seconds. Boom. You just did it. That's the end. Folks, anybody that's joining us live, did you feel anything? And don't say bad, right? If you did you feel anything different? Here's what this does. So, the Navy SEALs use this breathing technique to pull themselves out of panic, legit life and death panic situations. In 16 seconds, I can probably promise you that your business situation is not actual life or death. But I also know, too, based on being in business for a long time and going into panic situations, that some situations certainly felt life or death to me in that moment, right? So I'm not trying to compare my business plan to being thrown into a body of water. That would just sound nuts. But that feeling that you're going to lose it, when you're communicating and you're carrying any sort of stress, panic, angst, anger, whatever, right? People feel that. Use those 16 seconds to bring yourself back to a present tense of calm so you can convey what you work so hard to present. Then I'll add one more thing too. I call it the body of evidence. The body of evidence, something cool that you've done in your life. So my panic situation of many in my life, I was with my therapist, who still happens to be my therapist. He also happens to be a sports psychologist. He's based in the Philadelphia area. His name is Joseph Dowling, works with the University of Pennsylvania. He's a published author, coaches their men's and women's basketball team, has done work with the University of Rutgers, their lacrosse teams. He's all about mindset and situational hacks. And that's why I love these. These are all tweaks and pivots. You don't need years of work to get good with this. This is seconds. Body of evidence. He asked me when I was all like nuts and wigged out over something, point blank, think about something you've done in your life that you were proud of, that you felt good about. I'll give you an example from me, and I know it sounds like such a yay for me thing, but the fact of the matter is I use it because it's a good visual, which is literally, I ran a marathon. And as I said, people are literally, when I say they're like, you, I get offended for a second, but I get it. And I say that simply in the sense that it's like, okay. Oh, and folks, rest assured, there will be no long running stories. Nobody wants to hear them, including runners. So all I would say is this. You want to put yourself in a good frame of mind. You remember something good you've done in your life. I simply say that because I ran a race in Berlin, Germany. Post 50. Yeah, I was post 50. I'm in another country, ran 26 miles. And the fact of the matter is, maybe not relaxed, but I felt really good. I love that. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And I carry that memory with me. Like all the doubt that I had in, I'll never finish this. What am I doing here? I'm in another country, blah, blah, blah. And I remember getting ready to cross the finish line, and I was getting all choked up, thinking of like, oh my God, of all the things I've done wrong in my life, here's something I actually did right and finished, right? So I carry that memory. It doesn't, for you, it doesn't have to be a marathon. It doesn't have to be anything. It's something to make you feel good. What are you doing with that thought? Folks, if you've done something cool in your life of any kind, drop it in the comments. I'm guessing you have. I'm guessing you've done a lot of them. And so, with all that being said, what I suggest is this: keep a couple of those in your memory bank. Because when you're feeling keyed up, when you're about ready to give that big business moment and you feel yourself getting nuts, you want to pull that in to bring yourself back to present. Oh my God, I've never skydived, and oh, I wish. That sounds so awesome. Oh, I want to hear more. Now I'm looking as well too. Oh my God. Okay, all going right. Tommy, I promise you this: you pick it on a day that you realize that you're not at your best, and you're certainly not going to be feeling arrogant. So use these on days when you have to communicate something and you feel yourself getting nervous and you want to start drawing on all the bad things you've done in your life, all the wrong things you've done. I shouldn't be here. I'm a fraud. Wait a minute. I did that. And you use your 16-second breathing technique, then have the conversation with your team, just like that, right? And I'll add one more tip. I'm already 9 slides. My personal favorite. Remember that case study where the boss was all excited about his new initiative, their new initiative, and you're going to walk in and you want to convey the message? I call this tip watering the plants. Has nothing to do with gardening, even though it's a beautiful photo that I stole. But what it is setting you up for success when you're speaking, when you want to convey a message. I've noticed, especially as I've gotten older or been amongst great people, that remarkable speakers, powerful speakers, don't have to sound bossy or even overly loud. They have to sound true and authentic. But if you're nervous or uncomfortable delivering news, we talked about those numerous situational examples. They're not all happy moments, but you still have to follow through. You're a leader, so you have to speak and communicate. So I bring it up because I call it watering the plants. You walk into a room, works with 2 or more people. I've spoken, I think the largest audience I've spoken to in my life, I'm crazy grateful to say that. I think it was about 450 people. So not massive, but I've done several hundred people speaking engagements. And you first walk in and this is a sea of people, sea of faces, even when you know some of the people. Here's the tip. You want to ground yourself. You want to be able to convey the message the way you intended it. Find a friendly face. If it's around a big conference room table, that can intimidate people too. How do you fix it? Remember the mantra. You're always speaking to someone, not at someone. You want to make certain you're amplifying culture. Everybody matters. And the way that you make it matter is you're having a series of conversations. Move your eyes. Focus on an individual. Don't be afraid of them. And stack the deck. How do you stack the deck? In the beginning, find the friendly faces. Maybe if somebody you know, find them. Talk to them. Zach Carlin sitting in a room. I promise you, I'm looking at Zach Carlin. And I see that smile on Zach's face. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I can start to speak to Zach and I can get grounded. And then I can focus on the next person and the next person. The plants. Here's a pro tip. If you're ever at an event and you're asked to speak, invite a couple friends. There's your tip. Can't do that in a boardroom. It doesn't work great, right? That's why I call it watering the plants. I actually paid a couple of admissions to get people to sit in places so my eyes would go to them. Folks, the reason I bring all of this up is point blank. The ability to optimize your communications is the difference between success and failure. The difference between getting some of your mission accomplished and none of it or all of it. Because again, you have to rely on your teams. You have to rely on your vendors, your colleagues. You're not going it alone. Nobody wants to go it alone, and really no one can. So the way that you embody a culture, convey the message, hit goals, include everyone, make tough decisions, is to be authentic. And with that being said, it's the way that you communicate. You don't have to be everyone's friend. You don't have to be a cheerleader. But the fact of the matter is, you just have to sound true, authentic, and people need to feel that. And with that being said, even the most technical conversations, the most hardened conversations, the brutal conversations, even a termination, can be handled in a way that still garners respect and keeps your company moving forward. So just a few reasons that I suggest that you optimize your communications. And with that, I'm turning it back over to Zach.
No, that was obviously, there's so many great tips there. And what you notice is a big part of some of those tips and a big part of what makes them successful.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you a successful communicator is first how you communicate with yourself, which is probably the most important place that you need to start with improving your communications. Like I think it was Tommy that said, I actually struggle with being humble. Well, instead of communicating to yourself, hey, I struggle with being humble. No, you're just a confident person that hasn't quite learned how to point it. You haven't learned how to focus it in the right place yet, which is just fine. Yet you will. Up until now, I felt I was overconfident. I'm a confident person. I just need to learn where to point it.
Yep.
It's not that you're not humble. If you say, I'm not a humble person, all of a sudden you're setting yourself up for failure. All of a sudden, you sound like a narcissist. It's a slippery slope. John was saying somebody who maybe doesn't have that problem, maybe they have the opposite problem. They're not confident. They go up into a room like, I've been practicing this forever, but what if this is the time I slip on my head in front of everybody? What if this is the time that my pants fall down? We've all done some amazing things in our life, right? We've all done amazing things. And this is where a lot of people fall short. They're like, well, I'm about to go speak in a boardroom. I'm about to go, present to a prospect or a client. And I need to get myself, I need to find that confidence. And I'm going to use that tactic that I learned from Mr. John Duffin, but I have nothing that's even close to being related to, selling a deal like this, or getting a client, or speaking to 1,000 people. But you have. Adrena went skydiving. She had to overcome a lot of demons in order to go skydiving. She found a way to overcome fear. She had to figure some things out. She had to learn something new. She had to go to a strange place to do it, right? And she overcame it, and she jumped out of a freaking plane. If she can do that, she can figure out how to get in front of 20, 200, 1,000 people and give a 30-minute speech and give a 30-minute talk. It's all relative. It's all, we have so much proof, body of evidence, right? Proof of concept that we can overcome things, that we can accomplish things. And again, if we want to be effective communicators, we have to learn how to bring those things to the forefront. We have to learn how to communicate to ourselves and find that balance, like Tommy said. And obviously, a lot of this has to do with a big part of it is part of our foundations. Communication's everywhere. You can have the best team. You can have the best CRM. You can be utilizing AI. Actually, well, no, even if you don't know how to communicate, you actually can't use AI that well because you still have to prompt AI.
Tell them something, right?
You still have to prompt AI to spout out the content, right? To utilize its frameworks, right? You still have to learn how to communicate. You have to learn how to communicate. How do I communicate my message? What is my message? What is my purpose? Right? These are all part of your foundations. Now, if we want to, for all of you that stay till the end, we wanted to give you a little bit of a treat. We wanted to give you the opportunity to have a cup of coffee. I'm more of a tea guy these days. London Fog specifically. I'll have a London Fog, but we want to give you an opportunity to come have a 20-minute conversation with us. We'll give you an assessment that will determine, that will be a good indicator. It's not going to, these assessments aren't 100%, let's be honest, but this will give us a good place to start to determine where you need to focus on the most. What type of communications, what type of foundations are you lacking? Are you strongest in? Where can we utilize? Think of it as a personal SWOT. And then we'll take that information and we'll have a cup of coffee and a cup of tea. And we will point you in the right direction. We will bring you value, and we will provide you with the first steps in order to achieve what you want to achieve. Does that sound good?
I think it sounds great. And like I said, and I'm in. It's like, look, the nice part about this is we can turn the focus to you, not on you. It sounds a little harsh, right? But we can turn the focus to you. So sometimes, to get it out of theory mode and into practical, what can you do to make this work? I find when we do this, and the ease of which I get to communicate with Zach, the ease of it, when you're dealing with somebody like Kim, who's really intelligent and is exceedingly well-versed, but makes things feel and sound easy. And that works with me. And that's what I would also share back, is that it's when you are working with us, the thing that we can both convey is, again, and I said it earlier and I'll repeat it, which is these are pivots, tweaks, shifts. When I talk about voice, and I don't mean sounding like an announcer, nobody needs that. Nobody needs your voice is, and I haven't even met a lot of people that have been paying attention to us. Your voice is 100% perfect. 100%. The problem is, very often we're not giving them the full voice because it sounds edgy or tense or distracted or bored, and so it's just sounding true to what you're trying to say. And so these situational moves, sometimes that's where coaches come in, which is like that simple. If I'm looking at it from a different lens, it could simply be a matter of, oh, here, just try it like that. And then problem solved, but we can be much more specific about it. And that's what's fun. So that virtual cup of coffee, easy peasy. God, I hate that cliche, but I just said it out loud anyway. So anyway, right? But it is. It will have some fun. So there is a link that we're going to drop. And when we drop the link, we'll make certain that, again, just click the link, answer a couple of questions, height, weight, bank account number, the basics, easy stuff. And then we can grab a cup of coffee, tea, whatever. And we really look forward to it. Oh, Audrina, that's so nice. Thank you. Thank you. I meant what I said. It's like, first off, that it is, and here's our link. I'm literally looking, God, don't get old. I'm like looking like I knew there was supposed to be something. I'm supposed to be handling this. So I just did. So the link's up there now. Thank you, Zach. Zach bails me out of all the heavy tech stuff. So I can just go prattle on. But folks, we're thrilled that you showed up for us tonight. It's our first pass at this. And we meant what we said. And Zach coined the line, part of the Summit Chasers Network, rules of the road, so to speak. We have to be shitty at something. Is that how that goes?
Oh, we don't have to be. I wouldn't say that, but it's be okay. Be willing to be shitty. Don't go out and just be shitty for the sake of being shitty, but be willing to be shitty, because you have to be shitty before you can be great at something.
Pay attention to Zach Carlin. He's well worth following. I'll get it. I get there eventually as well too. Zach, anything else I'm leaving out, brother?
No, that was beautifully said. We didn't practice the ending of this a whole lot. So
clearly,
that was really it. And we're very excited. This is the first time that we did it, and we're excited to keep going, keep improving it, and get more and more people involved. But we're looking forward to hearing from those of you that want to come and have the cup of coffee or the cup of tea, whatever you want. Cup of Joe, you can have a beer. I don't care what it is. Let's have a talk. See if we can help. See if we can identify some things that you yourself, not just your business or in your career, but you yourself can focus on and improve.
I had a wonderful time, brother. I hope we get to do this. We are doing this again, right?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
Right.
Good. Folks, we're thrilled that you showed up for us. Zach Carlin, John Duffin, ready to come back with you with more. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk soon. Be well, all.